Hey everybody, welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, it's kind of a dream for many people that, to be an entrepreneur, start their own business.
Right.
And a lot of our VAR partners, they're people that just have maybe a passion for technology, technical expertise. And they said,
I can forge out on their own.
Yeah, I can apply that to my own business, make some money, be my own boss kind of thing.
Yep.
But they may not necessarily be equipped to tackle some of the legal issues.
You think?
Out of owning your own business. I mean, I don't know that I'd be able to.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
just going headlong. I'm an entrepreneur, and what are these legal issues?
Yeah, exactly. Wait a minute, I gotta be careful about getting sued about X, Y, Z, or not messing this up.
Oh boy.
So we're gonna address a little bit of that this week. We are joined by the RSPA legal counsel Jill Miller. Mm-hmm. She's gonna help us talk a little bit about VARs and the law, maybe some of the legal issues that they might come across, especially some of those SMB VARs that maybe don't have the apparatus to bring in their own legal counsels.
I was going to say they don't have a legal team behind them, that they've hired.
No, let's be honest.
Sitting at the ready.
It may be just like 3 or 4 folks that are just really good at barcode scanners and point of sale or something, we're going to talk about the data collection piece of things because more and more solutions are all about collecting data and analyzing that data. And there can be some tricky legal issues around the collection and what you do with that data.
True.
And then we'll get into specifically on the retail side, since, again, she works with the RSPA. We'll talk a little bit about cash discounting and surcharging. 2 things that I had never heard of before I started researching and saw Jill on another podcast talking about it. So I figured, hey, we got to talk about that here too.
We got to air this one out. Yep.
Good stuff. Hopefully we'll get you out of any legal hot water that you might get into in the future.
That's right.
Definitely not from our advice.
Or if not, I'm not liable.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not liable.
We will right up front.
Indemnification.
No legal degrees, nothing. We barely qualify as good marketers at this point. Let's be honest. All that plus our usual value to the VAR and what's TEConnecting with us. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
As I mentioned, our guest today is Jill Miller. She is a partner with Bodman PLC, and as I said, the RSPA legal counsel. Jill, thank you so much for joining us today. We love having you on the show. Dean had heard you at Inspire and said, hey, we got to get Jill on talking about some of these topics. So thank you for joining us today. Tell us a little about your background. How did you get into law? Is this something you wanted to do from the beginning? And more importantly, how did you find your way into our channel as someone that could be a legal expert?
Well, they certainly don't teach any classes about this in law school. I'll tell you that right now. I didn't go to law school till I was 30. I was working in a business and thought to myself, I have a degree in accounting. I don't want an MBA. I think I'll go to law school at night. I did. I took the LSAT, didn't study, did great, and then took me about 3.5 years and graduated. On my the day of my bachelorette party before getting married, I received the news I'd passed the bar the first time, so I had a nice bachelorette party.
Nice. That's a party there.
And so then with an undergrad in accounting, I was just put into a finance group at the law firm I went to. And then one of the partners was doing work with resellers and payments. And I immediately just fell in love with working with entrepreneurs, right? For me, the little people, that doesn't sound like a very nice way to say it, but the folks who don't have a huge company surrounding them and needed my help. And so then I started going to trade shows and then met these people and was just so inspired and felt so welcomed into the industry. And then here I am 19 years later, still practicing in this area. I had met John Kirk, who was a former president of RSPA at another trade show. And he said, our current legal counsel is leaving after 40 years. We're looking for somebody new. That was easy, right, to replace someone who'd been around for 40 years, as you might expect. Excuse me. And so then in January of 2020, I started representing RSPA, and COVID hit, so it wasn't real easy to get to meet people. But now here I am 4 years later. And now when I'm at the shows, I just know so many people and they've been so welcoming. And it's just been an amazing group. The RSPA too, I've been in other shows and stuff. This association really wants to help everybody, right? And so for me, that's really interesting to watch and to see sort of that um, desire to actually lift up and provide services that are really useful to the membership. So that's how I got where I am at the RSPA.
That's awesome. Hey, that's a good story. And apparently, what she's saying is it's super easy to become a lawyer.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
You just up and feel like it one
just
day.
pass the LSAT and, no problem.
Yeah, anybody can do that in their sleep.
My God.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, that would take me
MBA,
a month.
LSAT, sure, why not? All right. Well, hey, then I think we've got the right person to have this conversation with.
Yes, sir.
So, Jill, as I mentioned up top, a lot of the VARs, especially that we work with here at BlueStar, and a lot of the folks sound like you work with and speak to on a regular basis, tend to be these small, mid-sized businesses that, again, don't necessarily have, any legal background themselves. They don't have anybody that they can bring in on staff or have the ability to do that to help them navigate that kind of stuff. So let's talk about some of the maybe common situations from a legal standpoint that these VARs might find themselves in and might be unprepared for, where they might need some assistance or just might not know that they need to be thinking about this stuff. And to that point also, what are maybe some bare minimums that they should have in place to help protect their business from those kind of situations arising at all?
Right. I always say it starts with the contracts, contract management, really just, at its simplest form, making sure that you actually save your contracts, save them, don't put them in a filing cabinet and, not be able to locate them at some time. I always say never, ever, ever just sign an agreement. There is always room for negotiation, and the other side isn't going to present you with their most fantastic offer to start. And so over the years, I've always said to some of my smaller clients, I promise you, if you have me look at this, even if I spend just 1 hour, it's going to change your life. Something like, as long as, my merchant is still with you, I'm going to still get paid, no matter what happens. So that's a really important, point. Also, things like we can take your clients whenever we want. No, we're not going to allow that. We can terminate this agreement for no reason. Like we need some notice, maybe. We might need another partner to work things out with. And so really, I think contract management and having somebody else, even if it's an hour, look at your agreement. And because if another person, a lawyer, is looking at your agreement, I've probably seen it a dozen times in the last couple of months. So I know the things that are going to be easily negotiated or things that could be pitfalls for you in the future. A lot of our folks are out there just selling their little hearts out, right? I always say to them, all right, I'll be quick so you can go back to selling. And that's what they do, and they do it well. And so I feel like I have an obligation to help them protect their income. And, and then in fact, that helps protect their family and their future, and their hard work and effort isn't sort of ruined by some small minor provision in an agreement. And then lastly, I would say, again, I guess to get back to the first point, which is keep them organized. I often have people say to me, I'm selling my business. Are they going to want to look at all my contracts? Yes, they are. They're buying everything. So make sure you have them in an organized fashion. And so it's easy for you to pull them out when needed.
Let's dive in a little bit, because as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, when you put on your reseller hat, you've got your customer contracts, like the contracts that you have with the people you're selling to, but then there's also the partner contracts, like, those contracts that you might be signing with software companies and things of that nature. But so for right now, real quick, the customer facing contracts, is that the ones you most deal with? Like, it's the reseller and the contract that they have with their customer, right? That's primarily the contracts that you're talking about, and making sure that we have these.
It's both.
Okay.
It's upstream and downstream.
So on the customer facing ones, I was thinking about it. It's like, man, you can get into so many legalese around there. Is there a balance between, trying to cover yourself, but not being too verbose and word salady, if you will, on a legal document that turns into this 15-page thing that, oh my gosh, it's a head roller and stuff like that. Is that part of the challenge of, in your opinion, just trying to strike a good balance there, where things are getting covered, but it's not overly, because that can be prohibitive to doing business, right? You can get into a contract negotiation, it's too long, and it's like, you know what? I don't want to do business with you. It's too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I agree 100%. And I often, if you, on the RSPA website, we have a mutual NDA. That's really where we should be with a lot of the agreements, right? Protecting both parties, making it fair. An agreement is only as good as the two parties to whom it's between. And so we can have all this language, you can have all these protections, and if you have a bad customer or a bad vendor, it doesn't do you any good anyway. I often will say to my clients too, let's start with this form, and let's sort of, in 6 months, let's check back in and see what were the pushback items. What were the items that everybody is coming back to you and really wasting my clients' time, right? They should be selling instead of working on an agreement. And I also don't want them to have to spend legal dollars for me to have to review it every time if it's the same issue. And so we'll often get back together and say, okay, we're getting pushback every time on our term. They don't want to have it to be a 3-year term. For this, let's just move it to 1 year. Done, right? So that issue is never discussed again, because my client has modified the agreement. Now it's just 1 year. Let's talk about non-solicitation, or let's see, even on the customer, the downstream stuff. Pricing. They don't want to have an automatic pricing increase every renewal term. Let's try to figure out a way to finesse that language so that it's more palatable for the customer. So those are the things. It's really about figuring out your customer base and what is it. If the same problem's coming over and over and over again, you've got to try to find a way to, right. Yeah. It's a waste of time otherwise.
No, that's good advice. One area that John touched on, I'd love to get your opinion. Again, I'm thinking customer-facing contract, that whole idea of data privacy and security, I guess. Would you advocate that some kind of clause or some mention? I worry about resellers being out there that they may not think that they're in that it's an issue because maybe they're not selling equipment that everything that we do is data, but
at some point,
and it transmits and stuff like that. I don't know. What do you think, Jill? Should there be some kind of clause in there that protects them or has some language around that as a minimum, as one of those bare minimums that John was talking about? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think every contract should have some sort of a privacy provision that talks about how you're going to manage data, how you're going to use data, how you're going to share data, and how you're not responsible for some sort of breach in their system, and sort of maybe limiting your liability, in another section about data privacy. And, maybe we can dig into privacy a little bit later, but, in today's world, it's all about data minimization, right? Like, don't keep, the olden days was, let's keep as much data as we can, right? Even if it was, 50 years ago, maybe they'll try to, sell it to them again. In today's world, all the privacy laws are moving towards data minimization. So while you're, telling your downstream customer, here are the ways in which we expect you to protect your data, passwords, you have, training with your employees, because we really want to push to them that they have an ecosystem that's protecting data. We definitely just need to keep on thinking about how we use data, how we share data, how we try to avoid these breaches that are in the news every single day. I mean, it's just it's terrible. It just really makes me unhappy because these criminals come in and then just can really tear down the company.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. And even more so, then everybody starts attacking, the whole supply chain of, in trying to make everybody liable. And I always worried about the resellers, especially the small to medium size, that may not have the legal protection written into. And so that's just one of those areas. I know that's got to be hard to craft, but it's got to kind of be in there, right? Yeah. Kind of flipping over to what I'll call a partner contract, and maybe I'm not using the right word, but this would be like if you're a reseller and you're reselling software from somebody else, or a vendor's product or something like that. The intellectual property. I mean, I think about resellers, and everything is customized these days. I mean, and that's what resellers do, right? Mm-hmm. Like they can get a solution that's 80% of the way there out of the box, but then they likely have somebody on staff that can do some manipulation to the program, or they're adding their little piece of intellectual property on top of it to make it do what the customer actually wants it to do. And so does that come up in the contract terms when you're dealing with resellers and partners and making sure that they have that they're protecting themselves on their intellectual property so that they don't get into disputes, right?
Right. Yeah. You really have to sort of describe what happens when you do program and put something on top of an existing piece of software. And for example, let's say that you put this 20% piece on top of something that's already built, but then the supplier has to do refreshes to the system. You want to make sure that they're not sort of messing with your particular add-on, that they don't take your add-on and start selling it to their other customers. And so there is language that you can put in an agreement that protects the piece that you've built on your own, and that becomes your asset, your intellectual property, your software that the vendor, if they like it and want to buy it, you can license it back to them and make some. Yeah.
Are there any other pitfalls that you see on what I'll call those partner contracts that you would just raise up a little bit and say, hey, make sure, whether it's software or vendors, right? Because there are vendor contracts out there that some resellers get involved in too. Are there just some common pitfalls that you see resellers getting involved in and maybe you would red flag?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that, what's important is that the provisions are mutual, right? And so let's just say like they're making you represent and warrant that you are a company in good standing and you follow the laws and the rules of whatever industry or whatever business you're in, but they don't have to comply with them, right? So anytime they're telling you have to do something, confidentiality, that should be mutual. You're sharing with them your customers, really, right? They have all your customer information, and that's your biggest asset. And so when you look at a confidentiality provision in the contract and it's one-sided, it's like, no. I've spent so much time changing the name of the vendor to either party may, it's the other party instead of, me. It's, a mutuality thing.
That's really good advice just right there alone, right? Because these companies, they have legal departments, or maybe not legal departments, but they've obviously gone through their contract with a fine-tooth comb and oriented it in a way that benefits them the most, right? And that's just one, I guess, a classic way, right, Jill, of, hey, make sure that this is mutually, there's benefits and risks that are mutual, not just all one-sided, because I know a lot of VARs probably feel compelled to, well, I got to sign this contract so I can get this deal going and all this stuff. And meanwhile, they've left all their liability, wide open. Yeah. Right.
And they would be surprised how many times that the other side's going to say, okay, that's reasonable.
Oh, wow. Really? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't know if you don't ask, you don't bring it up. Yeah,
that's a good point.
That's right. Yeah. I always say, don't negotiate against yourself, right? Oh, I'm not sure if they're going to do it. Maybe I'll leave that one out. I'm always like, if it's something important to you, let's put it in.
Yeah. Put it in. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's no different than like when you're negotiating for a job. Like if you're trying to get a job and you want a slightly better salary, maybe some little extra vacation time or extra perks or something. It's one of those things like, hey, if you don't ask for it, they're just going to give you the standard contract and you sign off and say, fine, I'm good with this.
That's right.
But if you ask, more often than not, they're going to be, if they want you to work for them, they're going to be accommodating. They're going to tell you what they can and can't do. And this is no different. Like, it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't hurt to protect your business and tell people what you what you want and what you need to get out of this in order to have a fruitful partnership.
Absolutely. But I also love the fact that I've seen contracts. I know, Jill, you've seen thousands of them probably, but they are written in a way that totally, shields the entity. And then, it really exposes the reseller to some liabilities that they may not even realize. And so just a common thing, just the language of switching vendor to either party, something like that. Yeah. Any other common pitfalls that you see? Because that was a darn good one. Not, But anyway, I didn't know. Right, yeah.
I would say like exclusivity has always been a problem for me. Like trying to have someone just say, all you can do is my stuff and nobody else's. I am always like, you should have multiple partnerships, right? You should be able to, expand. What if something goes bad with a relationship? What if, the ownership changes or their direction changes or, their solution doesn't fit your customer base any longer. I think it's really important to be able to have the freedom to, these resellers, oftentimes dealers are, 1-2 people shops, and they are dependent on that relationship. So it's really critical to give yourself the ability to, go to trade shows, learn about other products and other providers, and not be prohibited from doing what you want to do with your time and efforts and expertise.
Wow, that's another really good one. Because now I'm putting on my previous life, working for a reseller. We were engaged in a couple of opportunities that the other party tried to make exclusive, and it was like one of these things where you are really torn as a reseller. Like we had an opportunity in the digital signage space to do a significant job with a significant quick serve restaurant chain, and it was like they wanted exclusivity, and we were like, no, I don't want to do that, because after we do this project with you, we want to go out and sell it to others. And it's like you really feel because they're dangling the carrot. Well, we've got all this business that we can give you as long as you're exclusive. And that can be difficult to navigate, right, Jill? I mean, whether you do it like a limited exclusivity, I guess there's all kinds of ways that you can spin that. But ultimately, your advice, I think, is really good. That would be like the last thing that I would want to do. And I'm not a lawyer, but to have a exclusive, that never really turns out well. Right. Yeah. No. The parties change, ownership changes, different people now, and there you are holding the bag. Technology can change. Now you're holding the bag on exclusivity. It's like, why did I do this? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You need to have flexibility as a dealer. Like, this is your life. This is your livelihood. This is your business. You shouldn't be trapped into a relationship with a partner that, I guess to me, it's almost like, are you so afraid that I'm going to go do something so wonderful someplace else? Give me more products. Give me more services. I'll sell for you all day long. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So good point.
Well, so let's go a little further back down that rabbit hole about the data collection analysis, because I do think that is something that's going to start becoming a big legal pitfall. You mentioned it earlier; these breaches are starting to occur more and more often. And granted, even though where it might be occurring might be at the end user side, it might be technically their fault or responsibility, or it could be within the software, not necessarily something that the reseller themselves, is actually selling or their own individual product. But we all know that, VARs, MSPs, integrators, they become kind of the face of the technology to their customers.
Absolutely.
They're the ones that, when something goes wrong, no matter who it is, no matter where it's happening or who it's involved with, they're the ones that get the blame, the credit, or the, hey, you guys need to fix this kind of thing. So I see that happening more and more often as we start going down this data collection and analysis path. We've got cameras, you've got sensors, you've got POS that's collecting more data. We just had our grocery survey where a lot of the end users are saying they want to collect more data from customers. They want to be able to learn more about what their customers' habits are and what they want and what they like. It helps benefit their business, helps them market better, helps them better product distribution, all that kind of stuff. They need that info, but we also know that comes with a lot of pitfalls and a lot of privacy concerns, especially, again, when you start getting into the camera stuff. People are nervous about that. And I know a lot of these software companies, it's kind of their responsibility to help out with that too. But I guess that's the big question here is, what kind of dangers are VARs stepping into when they start working with a partner that maybe is doing a lot of work on the camera side or the sensor side, a lot of data collection? how can we manage that up front, even outside of the contract? Is there certain things they should be doing or asking about before they even start working with these partners to make sure that they're working with someone who's going to be a good steward of that data and so that therefore when they are the focal point of those conversations, that they can either speak eloquently about it, or when something kind of trouble does occur, they're not the ones that end up legally liable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would start with the privacy policy. I would say to my vendors, give me your privacy policy. What specifically in the privacy policy will tell you what kind of data are we collecting? How are we using it? Who are we sharing it with? How do we maintain it? How can a consumer ask for it to be deleted or modified if it's incorrectly gathered? If they are doing cameras, are they in compliance with, I think there's a couple of states, maybe 3, maybe more, that have biometric laws, talking about what information are you collecting? How is it being used? It's interesting because when you're talking about AI, consumer sort of biometrics, looking at your face, like, is there discrimination, happening with the collection of that data? Is there, is there different kinds of marketing going to somebody who is looks disheveled or somebody who looks put together? I do look disheveled when I go to the grocery store.
Same here.
Not a good look. I wear my slippers too. My husband's like, "Really? You're going to wear your slippers?" I'm like, "I don't care until I run into somebody, right? Or until there's a
right, yeah. Who dresses up to go grocery shopping anyway? I mean, come on, yeah.
So there are a lot of, but I think in terms of like, what can every single reseller dealer do? VAR, they can look at the privacy policy and start there and see what kind of data is being collected. And, another thing is that, again, you have to be with a reputable partner who does have, a compliance team who isn't just sort of haphazardly, it's fine. We can collect data. We can use it how we want. You really need a sophisticated partner, because data and privacy is and will continue to be regulated. It'll continue to be monitored, and will continue to have bad actors who try to grab that data because of its value. So I think it's definitely something you can't just stick your head in the sand and say, I don't know anything about privacy. I don't need to. You need to start sort of digging in a little bit and start to understand, there's already, there's so many free webinars out there about privacy. There's an organization called IAPP that has a lot of free information about privacy, about state laws. Like if I'm in Michigan and that's the only place in which I'm selling, there's only a couple of data privacy laws in Michigan, and they're 1 and 2 pages. They're not that complicated. It's not so voluminous that, I think, and it's also sort of, Michigan in particular doesn't have a robust data privacy like California, right? But you could sit on a seminar on that and fall asleep, or you could, or there's, a lot of articles that sort of quickly summarize what, California's protecting. And sometimes it's the articles that people write that are much more understandable, written in plain English than maybe looking at a law. So
I think there's a couple really good points you're making there. One is that there is a bit of a Wild West when it comes to data right now.
Oh, yeah.
And that, you can, from state to state, city to city, there can be a lot of variance in what you are and aren't allowed to do. And I think, if nothing else, if I were in this business and I was, trying to sell these type of solutions, I would be very knowledgeable about what's going on in my region that I'm selling into. What are those particular privacy laws? And then holding any partners you're going to work with accountable to that stuff. Like, hey, here's what it says when we do these kind of solutions in our state. Can you meet those? And I think, to Jill's point, any good solution provider that is doing something on the data collection side is going to they should already have this kind of data or this kind of information readily available. It should be part of the conversation up front. They should be telling you from the beginning, oh, and by the way, here's how we're going to address security and privacy.
They should. But
that's my point. If they're not, one, obviously you should be asking about it. You should be a little
that's
dubious
the lesson
about it.
here. Absolutely.
And you should definitely be asking about that and make sure that you're satisfied with their answers. Again, like you said with the contract situation, you don't have to just go, okay, and just nod along when they finish their answer and sign off and be like, all right, even if you feel a little uneasy, ask the extra questions, go the extra mile, do a little more in depth.
Yeah, I like it because where I'm at now, and Jill, do you go to NRF? From
I
time?
don't.
Okay.
No.
Well, NRF is like everybody talks about the basement floor. It's where all the quote unquote innovation is happening, right? But this is all the AI companies that are getting into this, and it's like, I mean, you don't know who's fly by night and who's not, and so this is really good advice, I guess, is that. Okay, so you ask for the contract, but you need to be really careful about the privacy policy. That's what I'm learning here. Like, what is the language? What are they saying? Do they even have one? To your point, right?
Yeah.
If they don't have one, okay, that's a red flag for me.
I remember when we talked to Hanif from
I love where she was going. Oh, it's fine. We're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
We can collect the data.
Yeah, we know what we're doing. We're good. Yeah,
It's fine, Apple.
There's
nothing to see here.
When we talked to Hanif from FitMatch early in the year, he was talking
Yeah.
about the smart fit technology, and it's the dressing room, technology to kind of scan your body type or whatever and identify, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, man, like I know most people are going to be a little sensitive about the idea of something scanning their body.
Yes.
And how that might potentially be used and where that could potentially go. And, he was very upfront from the beginning talking about like, hey, this is only sensor data.
Yep.
There's no personal data associated with it. Here's how we,
And
secure
it just maps
and
it
store
to one of 100 models,
exactly.
1,000 models, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
That was the stuff where I'm like, all right, they clearly have thought about this part. But there are companies, to your point, that might say, hey, here's what we can do. We're going to take some cameras. We're going to, this is how we, do a quick snapshot of somebody as they're walking into your store and identify their age, their gender, their, whether they've got kids or not. And we'll do some marketing based on that. And we'll do all X, Y, and Z based on that. And you're like, okay, well, what happens to that data? Like, oh, it's good. We take care of it. We're fine.
We're good. Yeah. Privacy policy.
Again,
don't worry about
most of us, I mean, I know we live in this world where we're constantly being surveilled, at all times in some way or another. There's cameras and smartphones everywhere as it is, but we like to at least think we have a little bit of control over that. And I would like to think that if I'm walking into an establishment that is going to be taking those kind of pictures of me and using that in some way, that my picture of, me walking into the grocery store in my slippers one random Saturday and is not going to, can be floated out on the internet somewhere random at some point.
Well, I would never do anything with an image like that to blackmail you.
not.
Of course not. No.
No one would ever do that. Yeah.
Phil Miller, right.
Right.
Just ask Ben Affleck. Every day he shows up, walks out of a Dunkin' Donuts and smokes a cigarette. There's 6 billion people taking pictures of him and putting him on the internet and making him look like he's just always miserable. I mean, none of us want that in our life. So I think that's good stuff.
Go ahead, Jill.
I was just going to say one point that you guys brought up, which I'm just going to circle back to, which is privacy is governed by states' law, right? There is no federal. I mean, there's HIPAA that governs, health information, and there's, the Child Protection Act that, oversees how we handle children's data. But generally, the management, the use, the protection of data is on a state by state level. And each year we're getting these new privacy laws coming out. And so you really need a team or a company who has a team who is looking at this and biometrics is only recently coming into play, right? So these laws that were written prior to this technology don't even include biometrics in the definition of personal information. So it's a rapidly evolving area of the law. And so if I were sitting, and I were a creative type, and creating this program of facial recognition and data, I mean, the first thing I should be thinking about as I develop technology is, am I in compliance with privacy? And if I'm not thinking like that, I mean, you're in the wrong business. So it's really critical to have a partner who has the foresight to think about privacy and protections, and because data is so valuable, right? I mean, it's just the most valuable, and as evidenced by all these ransomware attacks. And
Yep.
so
Yeah, no doubt.
it's,
And end users, they're not always the ones who think about this stuff. I mean,
we just click through everything.
I know,
right?
like
Right,
every time there's some brand new app that comes out, it's like, hey, scan your face and see what you're going to look like in 40 years.
Right.
Millions of people sign up for like, sure, not even thinking about the fact that someone's taking a picture of your face and
Right.
doing who knows what with it.
Yeah.
Now you can be sure that when something goes wrong with that, they're going to be looking for someone to blame. And someone
everybody
to
along
sue.
the chain. That's what I'm saying, right? Yeah.
That's I think our point here is like, don't be that person that they decide to sue because you didn't ask the right questions and confirm what's going to happen.
Absolutely. But that gets me wondering a little bit, Jill. I'd love to have your take here. And so I'm going to go back to the reseller's contract with their customer. Should they have a privacy policy or statement or clause, something that addresses privacy in the contract, right? That is what I'm hearing relative to the state and or states plural that they might sell in. Like, if you're in the Cincinnati area, you're probably selling into Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana. So
Right,
now you've
right.
got 3 different states privacy policies that you got to make sure you're adhering to. So would you advocate that there's at a minimum, again, one of those minimum things, you should have some kind of privacy policy in your contract?
Well, it depends on what you're selling, right? I mean, right. So if you're selling a product, if you're selling a biometric product that has cameras in a location, you absolutely should be clear that your vendor has a privacy policy, and you would probably include that and as a reference in your agreement to say, and you also know that this is how the personal identifiable information is governed by this privacy policy.
Got it. I see where you're going. Yep. Okay.
Good stuff.
Yep.
I'm recovering from a trade show.
No worries.
Understandable. All right, well then let's wrap up talking a little bit about retail in particular and the payments world, because I think payments is another place where there's kind of a little bit of a wild west starting to occur there. All these different methods and types of payments that you can do, and digital wallets and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, and by the way, my 13-year-old now has a Venmo card.
Yeah,
did you know you could do this?
Yeah, I know they have those cards.
So now
they
as a parent, you can get your kid a Venmo card.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway,
so there's a lot of different payment options out there, and a lot of things that I think end users and retailers, I have no idea what they should and shouldn't accept, or what they're liable for, or again, what our resellers are liable for. So, I saw you on Jim Roddy's podcast talking a little bit about cash discounting and surcharging. So I think, first of all, I'm assuming that most people probably know what that stuff is, but just in case, give us a brief explainer of what those are, and then what is a VAR's role in keeping their customers and their businesses compliant with those particular things.
Yes. Okay, so we will hear the terms cash discounting and surcharging. And then we also hear dual pricing when we're talking about these two topics. So to go back to cash discounting, a cash discount program is a program when a merchant has a posted price of $2 for, I have nail polish sitting on my desk, for a bottle of nail polish, right? Such a girl. So $2 for a bottle of nail polish, and then if you pay by cash, you pay $1.80. That is a cash discount program. And so also to note is that there is no law, either state or federal, that prohibits cash discounting. So there is no law that says you can't offer a cash discount. On the flip side, we have a surcharge. And a surcharge is when you have a posted price, the $2 for the nail polish. If you use a credit card, and that's an important point here, which I'll get into a little bit in a moment. If you use a credit card, you pay another 40 cents, and now the surcharge is the 40 cents, has to be listed separately, and when you put your card in the terminal, you're paying $2.40. Now, surcharges are governed by state law and the card brands. There are about maybe 10 years ago, there were a number of states, about a dozen, that prohibited surcharging. And there's a whole history, which I talked about at Inspire, which I found fascinating. Not that I was talking, but doing the research about the history of surcharges and sort of, large merchants and the card brands sort of fighting over this issue. And so surcharging now is only prohibited in 2 states, which are Connecticut and Massachusetts. So you can't do a surcharge in either of those 2 states. And it is limited, the surcharge that you can impose on and again, it's only on credit cards. So you cannot impose a surcharge on a debit card or a prepaid card.
Across the board there, Jill? Like nowhere, anywhere? Okay.
No. And people will say to me, well, what if I just sign? Like that's like a credit, right? No. It's the card. If it's a debit card, regardless if it's PIN or signature, you may not put a surcharge on that card. And the limits that the card brands have stated is sort of it has to be the lesser of 3% or your merchant discount rate. So, you can't just say 10% surcharge for a credit card. Also, in the state of Colorado, they have a cap of the lesser of 2% or the merchant discount rate. So, as I'm starting to sort of walk down this road, as you can see, there's lots of variances and lots of compliance requirements, right? It's not just, okay, here's my surcharge program. You have to have a software vendor who has the software developed in a way that knows when a debit card is being presented, knows that if a consumer is in or merchants in a particular state that they can't, in Colorado, they can't, if it's normally 3%, every place, they can't do it more than 2% in Colorado. And if they have a merchant in Connecticut or Massachusetts, they can't do it there. So there's, a lot of programming that needs to be done prior to just moving into a surcharge program with, just some random company who says, yeah, we can do it, no problem. Well, do you have sort of the infrastructure to manage how and when it's charged? No, you can program that yourself. Well, merchants don't know how to program it themselves and don't know the laws in all the states. So those are sort of at a high level cash discounting and surcharge programs.
Yeah, go ahead, Jill. Yep. Mm-hmm.
One last point I was thinking, which is this dual pricing thing we often hear about. Yeah, so dual pricing is used in a cash discount environment because the card brands say, while they don't prohibit cash discount programs, they say you can't sort of disguise a surcharge program as a cash discount program. So the card brands say, if you want to offer a cash discount program, you have to, you can do one of 2 things. A, post just the credit price, and then you can offer a discount off of that. Or B, you can list both the cash price and the credit price. And that's dual pricing, where you list both cash and credit price. So that's that.
And you see that sometimes. I'm thinking of like gas. When you're going down the road, you'll see you pay cash, you get this price. You pay credit, it's this price. Hey, a couple questions there, Jill, real quick. At Inspire, I know there was a lot of dialogue around. I don't know if it was one of the major card carriers. There was some legal decisions, I guess, being made, or that were coming up maybe this summer or maybe now around surcharging or their ability to do that. Was there some kind of decision that was made or something like that recently around these? Because I know a lot of the resellers were worried. They were worried about the amount of surcharging and stuff like that because I guess some of them built in their profitability into the surcharging on the product and stuff like that. Do you have a comment there? Am I reading that right, or was I reading what was happening in the market there right?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think one is that Visa did lower the percentage that you could impose on a card transaction from 4% to 3%. So that is definitely a change that they made. They also made a change, and this is doesn't really have to do with the program. It's just about notification. You used to have to notify Visa if you were going to have a surcharge program. Now you just have to notify your acquiring bank. But yeah, people were kind of a little disappointed in Visa's reduction in the amount of the surcharge. The other thing that has been, talked about and a lot of people are disgruntled about um, is this non-cash adjustment. And I think a lot of people, that's where Visa came in and did a lot of these mystery shops and said to merchants, this is not a cash discount program. You can't list a price of $2 and then add a non-cash adjustment of 50 cents and then have the final price be 250 and call that a cash discount program. That's where I think a lot of ISOs were and resellers and VARs were like, well, we were told this is okay, when in fact it wasn't okay. Um, because a real cash discount program is a discount off of a price for paying with cash. And so to characterize this non-cash adjustment as a cash discount program, Visa said, no, that's not a compliant cash discount program. And so there's a lot of debate about whether or not, that is or is not but the rules are very clear. And, being a lawyer, I'm a rule follower. Uh, I don't, I don't mind cash discounts. I don't mind surcharges. I mean, for me, I never mind merchant cash advance companies. I mean, whatever the market uses and helps companies, might not be the one size is great for everybody, but as long as you're running a compliant program, I think that's fine. But cash discount is simply, as Visa has said, either a posted price less a certain amount if you pay with cash, or you have the cash price and the credit price. So that's I think the frustration that has been in the industry by VARs.
Yeah, this is the kind of complicated stuff that, again,
man.
I would think a lot of people just don't think about or realize is going on
Right.
out there or know enough about.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's incumbent upon the resellers, obviously, to know, and ultimately, I guess, educate the merchants, right? Because a lot of the small SMB resellers are engaged with startup restaurants, startup retail, and if you're an entrepreneur that's opening up a clothing storefront, you're probably not going to know about everything that we just talked about.
You just want to sell some clothes.
You just want to sell some clothes.
Yeah.
You're not aware of cash discounting and all these compliance that you have to have as it relates to it, right, Jill? So
right, and you don't want to have the ability to accept credit cards taken away. I brought up at Aspire my dry cleaner. She has a sign that says credit and debit cards are charged 3.99% surcharge. Well, I tried to explain to her. She didn't want to hear what I had to say. She was like, be gone, take your clothes. And so she surcharged my debit card and continues to do so to this day. And she, she doesn't care, what I say. And until she's educated by her VAR reseller or until she gets fined, she's going to keep on running that program. So, and I'll keep paying it.
Yeah.
there you go.
Let me ask you, Jill. I mean, we can all kind of feel like that cash is on its way out in some ways, and I know that's easier said than done because not everybody has access to banking or to credit cards, and that, as it is.
Right.
Is that gonna? Do you feel like that's gonna start changing this conversation? Is cash discounting itself even gonna potentially go away if really almost no one's using cash anymore at some point?
Well, I think it's really useful in places like, the corner store, right? And so if you have two competing little markets across the street from each other and one gives you a cash discount and you go and buy the same Diet Coke and your honey bun every day. My mom eats those honey buns still at 83. You pick me up one of those honey buns.
So she's the reason we have 30 of those in our vending machine.
Yes.
Yes. And so, that you might sort of, as a matter of course, just go there because you're saving 50 cents every day. So it's just a matter of where does it make practical sense to have a cash. Surcharges, I always say, are probably easily applied in a parking garage, right? Because I don't carry cash and I'm going to pay the surcharge. I'm not going to, if I'm staying for, anything over $10, I'm just going to be like, anytime I'm just going to be like, fine, charge me the surcharge.
You're not going to drive around another garage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So it really depends on the merchant, I think, and the competitive nature and the kind of business they're operating.
All right. Well, hey, in a moment, we're going to let Jill talk a little bit more about what she does for the RSPA and how she can maybe help you out if you're a member. Before that, we want to, as always, thank our sponsors here on the TEConnect podcast.
Yes.
We very much appreciate everyone who supports our show, supports BlueStar's TEConnect program.
That's right.
So we thank you, and thank you for all the fine folks that you help lend to the podcast for us all the time, too.
Yep.
Hey, if you like the show, though, of course, you gotta inform us in some way. It's not just good enough just to listen to something or watch something and go, hey, that was pretty cool, and just go about your day. No.
You got to roll too.
Yeah. It's you got a role to play. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment for us, share the episode with someone else that you think might be interested.
Hey,
if you're listening on a podcast platform of your choice, if there's an option to leave a rating and review, please do that. You'd be surprised how big of a deal that can be, especially for podcasts like on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Helps amplify, get the word out.
It
there.
does. Ratings, reviews are good stuff. Plus, it just makes us feel good. I mean, if I get to read a nice review that's from someone other than your daughter saying, give
us the positive reinforcement. Not my daughter. That's right. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
We very much appreciate that. So please do that. And hey, as always, if you have ideas for the show, reach out to us. If you've listened to this conversation, you're like, you know what? There's a particular legal issue that I'd love for Jill to talk more about.
Yep.
We'll be happy to get her back on.
That's right.
And go to a little more in depth with something else. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn. You can also email us anytime, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap up today. First of all, with our VAR value. And again, Jill is doing some great work over at the RSPA and has clearly demonstrated her expertise and knowledge about this industry. So Jill, maybe explain that a little bit more. Like, what does it mean to be the legal counsel for the RSPA? How can members utilize your experience? What happens when someone contacts you and reaches out for help? How are you assisting them?
I always say I'm like your starting point, right? Instead of having to call your local attorney and spend 30 minutes talking about the industry generally or about a legal principle, call me. And I like to do Zoom calls and just sort of get to know the members because we always sort of move into other things that they hadn't thought about. Like, let's say they have a question about indemnification, such a fascinating topic. And then we might move into me saying to them, what about your exit strategy? Have you thought at all about, like, what are you going to do long term? Oh, I hadn't thought about that. What about, are your agreements able to be assigned? So I'm really there to sort of be a jumping off point about general legal concepts without doing legal representation. So just giving them some insight into a legal issue, a legal question, a legal principle, cash discounting and surcharging. And so I am eager to chat with our members. So you can feel free to reach out to me through the website. My information's on gorspa.org or jmiller@bodmanlaw.com.
Awesome. There you go. And I'll drop that stuff in our show notes.
Absolutely.
To go find
it's nice to have somebody, if you're part of the association, these are exactly the kind of values that the association brings, and be able to have a conversation with somebody like a Jill that, okay, she's not maybe going to represent you, but she can help you, a jumping off point. Love it, right?
Yep.
Here, let's say I'll give you a little better understanding of what you need, and that's the value of the RSPA.
Yep. If you have this kind of access to this kind of a service, take advantage of it.
We love the RSPA, by the way.
We do.
Did you see our social campaign around
we
that?
very much do love the RSPA. So.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. That's good stuff. So yes, definitely check the show notes if you want to reach out to Jill. I'll put those links in her email there, and you're welcome to reach out to her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, let's wrap up as always with What's Tech Connecting with You, our favorite segment where we get to talk about something in the world of tech, business, science, innovation, just something we feel like chatting about today. So Jill, I'll let you kick it off here. What's Tech Connecting with You right now?
Oh my gosh, this is so sad. But here is my TEConnect, which is, do you know what the Bartesian is?
No.
Oh my goodness.
Bartesian.
The Bartesian.
Okay.
So the Bartesian is a Keurig for cocktails.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I like it already.
Yeah.
All right. So the Bartesian is a cocktail maker, and my husband is so lovely and always wants to buy me gifts, and and so I was like, I want the Bartesian. So for Christmas, I got the Bartesian. Whoa, was I happy. So you'd get these little pods that are not inexpensive, and you put it in the machine, and it reads a barcode. And there are 4 different bottles of alcohol, and it knows you can either set it to mocktail, light, regular, or strong after a very long day of contracts or dealing with a 14-year-old child. And so then it automatically knows how to mix the drink. And it's sort of, I realize that I like tequila now. I've been enjoying the margaritas. So that's my, I think it's a good service to let your customer base know and your viewership of the Bartesian.
This might be one of the better TEConnects that we've had.
No
the
doubt.
Bartesian.
We'll see. We'll see
I don't
if their
want to know
sales
the
go
cost,
up. Yeah.
but yes.
Yeah.
I love the concept.
I was going to ask about the margarita thing because my wife has been kind of eyeballing margarita mixers and getting into that for a while now.
Yeah.
And this might be the solution to that, but then also maybe some stuff that I could do. Like I'm getting into old fashions lately.
Yeah,
That's been my thing
They have
lately.
an
So yeah,
old-fashioned pod. They
Nice.
have an old-fashioned pod.
okay.
They have all kinds of unique, and the margaritas, they have blackberry, they have watermelon, and then again, you can make it light, after
Right,
the light,
right.
you have a little taste and just
A little hint of the alcohol.
I love
Okay,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dig
I
it.
like this idea. I knew somebody would come up with that.
Amazon Prime Day is coming up. We'll see if maybe.
I can send you a friend code. We could both get something.
Oh,
free.
nice. There we go. Yeah, do
there
it.
you go.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Nice.
What's TEConnect with you, Dean?
All right, so I got 2 of them actually for you. Everybody knows of Wordle, right? That had its run
Yep,
for a while.
yep,
Maybe
yep.
you still do Wordle.
I occasionally,
you probably
yeah,
do.
I do from time
If you
to
don't know
time,
what
yeah.
Wordle's all about, you guess the letters
Yeah.
of a phrase or a word, and you go through iterations until you actually get the word. And,
Right.
the faster you can do it, you feel better about it.
Yeah.
Well, they have something called Bandle. So Bandle is where they actually give you the different tracks of a song, and the goal is to guess the song. So you'll start you off with the drum track. You only hear the drums.
Okay.
And if you can't guess the
Okay.
song, then you add in the bass line.
Right.
Can't answer. Then you add in the guitar. Then you add in the organ. Then maybe a little bit of a voice cover
Right.
and stuff like that. So that's my new one. So here's the.
Okay.
Oh,
Sounds familiar. Marco says he already knows what it is.
Marco already knows what it is. This one for me was one of. I'm a drummer, right? So
Right.
I heard the first 2 measures of this one. I was like, I know it. Yeah, do you know it?
No, I'll probably need a little guitar before
Marco,
I would
do you
get
need
it
it? No,
potentially.
Okay.
Marco, what's your guess?
No,
He says Van
no,
Halen,
sorry,
no.
and maybe it
I
wasn't
was
up
going to say
to
maybe the
mic.
Clash. That was my.
Oh my gosh,
my
no!
guess,
This
but-
is that one, and I'll move on. But this one was Katrina and the Waves, "Walking on Sunshine."
Oh, okay, okay.
I mean,
All
it
right.
is like a very anyway. Yeah, but so
And I assume they start you off with probably the lesser known part.
yes. Well, that was difficulty level 1, so that was easy.
Oh, wow.
And I guess there's other ones you can amp up the difficulty.
This is definitely for someone with a musical ear, I think. Yes.
Well, that's why I'm kind of bringing it
Yeah,
up,
yeah,
right?
I get it.
Us musicians, and believe you me, I failed miserably on many of these.
Right.
It's like, what? I mean, I've got, because they'll give you 6 different things. It's like, I still don't know what.
Now there was one called Hurdle that I was into. for
Hurdle,
a
yes,
while,
yes.
which would actually play you a snippet of the whole song.
Yes, right.
And I was usually pretty good at those. I might need like 2 or 3 snippets to get there. I was usually pretty good at that. I think it started you off with like a 5-second chunk, and then you could go to expanded 10 seconds and 15 or something like that. But that one seems like that would be a lot harder, I think.
There you go.
Again, unless you're someone that's very attuned to the tracks within music. All right, what else you got?
Does the smell of a brand influence you at all?
I don't
Jill,
know.
would you be influenced by the smell of a brand at all? Look,
I suppose
you guys
it
are like,
depends on what
I
that
don't know. What
smell
do you
actually
mean?
is. What are we talking
All right,
about?
so now go to I'm just going to make this so easy for you. I'm going to go QSR, McDonald's French fries.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Does the
yeah.
smell, would that bring like the smell of a
Well,
brand
yeah.
to you? Okay, so McDonald's they were testing in the Netherlands, billboards. These were temporary billboards that had no marketing on them at all, except for they emitted a smell, and this smell was McDonald's fries.
Okay,
and they strategically placed these close to McDonald's. And they tried to lure people into a McDonald's just by the smell. Like you walk by and you're like, you know what? I smell some McDonald's fries. I think I need me some McDonald's. Do you think that would work on you?
I think that actually would work.
I think it would work on me too as well.
Like
Jill, do you think this would work on you? Yes, exactly.
That's got to be specific to food brands. Though. Like I don't want Planet Fitness getting in on this, you know?
We need no smell-o-vision for Planet Fitness. No, I'm with you there.
But I could see it. There are some iconic food brands.
There you go. Like a Starbucks. I could see, like their roasted coffee has just that distinct McDonald's fries. You're right. Maybe this is limited to a certain amount of brands.
Right.
But hey, smell-o-vision might be coming to you. And so they partnered with, based off this, I think they had really good results. Now in the U.S., don't be surprised, and this is serious, they were going to do, because I guess they've got McDonald's and Krispy Kreme is now getting together donuts. Yeah. So you might get some Smello donuts that are strategically placed nearby. Man. Right? Marketers will do anything, won't we?
We will, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do just about anything
we can think of.
What's TEConnecting with you?
All right, well, so, this is one of those medical things, an interesting medical technology development that I think is amazing. And this one in particular is for folks that have been paralyzed. And basically it is a non-invasive spinal cord stimulation that can help those with paralysis, that maybe partial paralysis, that are, have lost some use of their hands in order to help them get their hand usage back. It's called ARC-X is the name of it. And it basically uses an electrical stimulation to the spinal cord. Again, non-invasive, not a surgical procedure, just something they place that can basically put a little bit of pressure and needles into the spinal cord at certain areas below or near where the injury occurred in order to create some electrical stimulation that will allow. Basically, the idea is that it starts getting the nerves reacting again and potentially can get those nerves to start constructing new pathways for these folks to be able to retain it, to get a little bit new movement. Now, the use case they gave here was a woman who had a horse injury. She'd fallen off a horse, was paralyzed from about the chest down, still had a little bit of movement in her right hand, I think, but nothing in her left necessarily. And something she pointed out in this article is that, a lot of folks think, you talk to someone who's tetra or quadriplegic or paraplegic and they just want to be able to walk. But for a lot of these folks, I just want to be able to use my hands again.
Right.
Like that is even more important than even, being able to walk is just being able to properly use my arms and limbs and hands again.
And the dignity that it brings back and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
So they were able to do some testing. It was basically, they had a 4-month trial with 60 people. It was one of the largest trials they've done with this. And there was 72% of the folks that did it saw improvements where they were able to gain extra functions or new movement with their hands in gripping and movement again. Now, again, part of the caveat here is that there still has to be a little bit of, nerve
still there
connection. Yeah, exactly. If it's total paralysis where there's no connections left anymore, probably isn't going to work.
Right.
But if there's at least a little bit there, it can either restore additional functions or in her case, restore function in a limb that was not functional, whereas the other one had been before. So, there's still some work to be done here, but they're hoping to expand this out a little bit further and get to, a place where maybe more people can potentially take advantage of this.
This stuff is fascinating.
It really
where
is,
some of these medical initiatives are going, it's just unbelievable.
Yep. So ARC-X, and I think the non-invasive aspect of it, I think, is what's really people are really excited about, because you don't have to go through a complex and expensive
surgery,
or prolonged surgery. It's something that with a little bit of stimulation, they can potentially get some results.
That's a good one too.
Good stuff there.
Yep.
So that is what's TEConnecting with us today. Unfortunately, it's time for us to unplug today. Jill Miller, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate having you on the show. Until next time, go out and try out some Bandle. See if you can figure out. I am gonna have to try that out.
Yeah, Bandle.app.
The next time you smell some French fries, you might.
You were lured.
You might get lured into a restaurant, and hey, go get a Bartesian and mix up.
Yes.
And as always, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect podcast is brought to you by Elo and the 7-inch Elo Pay integrated POS system. Elo Pay packs all the power you need to run your point of sale, complete with a 7-inch touch display, integrated payment, Android 12 OS, and a Qualcomm SD660 processor. The compact enterprise-grade terminal delivers the modularity that merchants require. We love modularity.
Did you say modularity?
I did.
Boom!
Ding, ding, ding. It's like, we should have like a Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of thing. Where like, when we say words like modularity, it's like, no, that would get this podcast turned off real quick.
That's right.
Every time we're screaming and chatting when we say certain words, we'd lose our sponsorships real quick too.
No doubt.
All right, well, you can dock this to a printer stand. You can place it on the counter. You can integrate it with the Z70 stand. EloPay offers comprehensive payment services that enable merchants to process transactions with confidence. With access to multiple payment applications, end-to-end encryption, secure tokenization, robust terminal management services, and easy-to-use APIs for quick integration, merchants can get started quickly and securely, allowing their customers to dip, tap, and swipe. Physical cards or contactless. EloView device management, essential edge, enterprise support, EloCare protection. The EloPay 7-inch POS system is ready to deliver for your customers' needs. Contact the BlueStar Elo team to learn more.